Hello guys, it's nice to meet you again and you're welcome back to our demo. So in today's demo, we're going to see the complete CRUD operation best practice with Spring Boot and MySQL. So we are going to generate a brand new project and we are going to implement the CRUD operations in the best practice. And for that, we're going to quickly go to the spring.io. Now, if you're not familiar with this spring.io, you can just go here, go to Google and type in Spring Initializer. You can just type the Spring Initializer and hit enter. And you're going to be directed to Google here. So just click on this first one here. So this one is going to take us to spring.io here. You can see here. So this where we can generate a brand new project, a brand new Spring Boot project. So now we're just going to leave this on Maven and Java, and here I'm going to change the group. So I'm going to change this group to com.fix the code, right? Fix the code. And the artifact here, I'm going to just say Spring Boot CRUD and demo. So I'm going to leave this name like this, and the description is just going to remain like this. And what I'm going to do is to remove this hyphens from here, which is the package name. I'm just going to remove the hyphen and leave every other thing in default. We are using Java 17, right? So having done this, we are going to need some dependencies. So the first one I'm going to pick here is this here, the Spring Web. So having these dependencies in our project, this very one here is going to give us all these we are seeing here that is written here: the RESTful API, Spring MVC, Apache Tomcat embedded. So by choosing this one here, this one is going to pull along all these dependencies. And the second one we're going to need is Lombok. So actually, Lombok helps us to get rid of boilerplate code like it's written here, right? So by using just annotation, we don't need to write getters, setters, and other stuff that will make our class look clumsy. So the next one we're going to do, because we are going to be using MySQL, MySQL, we're going to be saving to database and retrieving for database operation. So we're going to need MySQL. So what I'm just going to do here is to type here MySQL, and we are going to choose this. And the next one is JPA. We're going to choose the JPA, Spring JPA, that will actually give us access to some free CRUD operations. Okay, now these are the 4 basic dependencies we need right now. So as time goes on, as we go along this demo, if we need other dependencies, we can always go to the Maven repository to find the ones we need and add to our POM file. So having said this, I'm going to click on generate. And this one here is going to save this project in a directory in our system. So you can just choose a directory that suits for you and save your project there. So for me, I'm just going to save my project on D and my blog post. I'm going to save everything here. So I'm going to hit on save. And now we can see that the project has been downloaded. So just open the directory and right click on this, and I'm going to extract here, right? Okay, cool. So we can see that this project has been extracted here, here. So I'm going to right click on this and open this folder with as IntelliJ project. I'm just going to click on this, and this one is going to open in IntelliJ. Sorry, this one is out. Yeah, sorry, it was out of my screen. So this is the project that has opened, the one we just generated, right? Spring Boot CRUD demo. And now we can see that the dependencies are being resolved, and in a few seconds we're going to be through with it. So I'm just going to remove this. So now we can see that our project has opened. We have generated a brand new project. And right here, I'm going to open up this project and see what we got. So now we can see this is the main entry of the application, the main class. And now, how do we know that this one is a Spring Boot application? So we can see this annotation here, Spring Boot application. So this one tells us that this application is being bootstrapped by Spring Boot. So this is Spring Boot application, right? And now I'm going to close down this main class, and I'm going to go here to our default the package. So I'm going to right click on this package and create a new package called pets. So this demo, we are going to use a class called pets, right? So this is the package, and I'm going to right click on this pet package and create a new Java class called pets inside. So this one is the pet package. And now we are going to need some attributes. So just few attributes for the demo, right? So the first one we're going to need is the ID of the pet, which is of type integer. This type integer. Then after that, we're going to need the name of the pet, which is of type string. Sorry. So this one is of type string. And then our pet has color. So we are going to specify the color of our pet, and that one also we're just going to do this of type string as well. So these are the three things we actually need for this entity. Now this very class here is going to be representing a table in our database. Now how do we do that? For us to convert this class to a table in our database, we're going to annotate this with a JPA annotation called @entity here. So now this annotation tells JPA, tells Hibernate that this one here, this class is going to represent, is going to serve as a table in our database, right? So now we can see that if the moment I put in this annotation, we see that we're having an error here that demands us to specify the primary key of this class, because if this class is going to be a table in a database, then that we should have a primary key in that table, right? So now we're going to specify that class by using another annotation called @id, and this one here should be coming from the Java persistent direct here. So this one, by using this one here, actually helps us to, it makes it easy for us to change our provider later, because right now we are using the JPA, the Hibernate, right? So if we use this here, this one is going to be from Java, then we can easily change to another provider later. So we're just going to use this. Now there is something I didn't do, so I want us to look at the POM file before we continue, so that we actually see the dependencies we have here. So these ones are the dependencies we included right the last time we created the project, remember? So these are the 4 dependencies we included here. So you can see here the Lombok is right here in the build. We have the Mysql, which is the database, the Mysql Java connector, and we have the Spring Boot starter web. So this one here actually have, and if we go here, we are going to see more of other dependencies that these dependencies have pulled along. So from here we can see all the dependencies that we have gotten in our class path. You see here, all these are the things we have gotten from in our class path. Just by putting these 4 dependencies here, we got all these, and these are the things we need to create a complete web application, a complete Crud application using a Spring Boot. So I'm going to close this down, and also I'm going to close down the POM file. I have showed you this earlier before we begin, right? I'm sorry for that. So now we are going to continue with our entity class. So now we have specified the primary key to this table, which is the ID. Now the ID, we are not going to be providing value for this ID manually. Rather, we want our database to generate value for this ID automatically the moment we save in a new pet. So how do we do that? So now we are going to have another annotation called @generated value here. So this one here is called @generated value. So by putting this here, my Mysql is going to auto increment our ID. Is going to generate the value automatically when we save in a new pet. Now we are going to specify the strategy on how this should be generated. So when I write generation here, generation type here, you see that we have 4 different type of options here. We have the auto, we have the ID, we have the sequence, we have the table. So this one here depends on the database you are using, depends on what your database supports. So you can read more about these 4 options to see the situation when and where to use all these, right? But for this demo, we're going to be using the identity here. So this is all we need for us to create our entity, to make this table and to make this class a table in our database. Now we are going to make use of, there's one annotation I would like to show you here. So this annotation is called @table. So this one here is optional. So I'm just going to say pet. This one is optional because by default, if we don't specify this, by default, JPA is going to create a table in our class. Hibernate is going to create a table in our class with a name called pet, just like this by default. Okay, so we don't really need to specify this. So I'm just going to leave it here for clarity's sake. Okay. Now the other one I'm going to do, I'm going to use the lombok. Last time we added lombok to our class path in our POM file, right? So now I'm going to use this lombok here. So I'm going to have @all_arg constructor. So if I put this @all_arg constructor, we're going to see that we're going to have another error here. Now why are we having this? Because every Java class has a default constructor, right? If you don't provide any constructor, there's a default constructor for you to use. But the moment you provide your own custom constructor, then you will also provide the default constructor, which is no arg constructor. That is why we are having this error here right now. So for us to, if we hover this, we're going to see that it's asking us to create a constructor in pet, which means it's talking about the default, the non-arg constructor, right? So for that, I'm going to do that also with annotation. So by using a no-arg constructor here. So this one actually gives us a non-arg constructor. You can see that the error has gone away. But what I'm going to do right here, I'm not really going to use this one here. There's no point of using this all_arg constructor because we don't want to include the ID in our constructor, right? We want our database, we want our database system to generate this ID automatically. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is to create a custom constructor that will exclude this ID here. So because of that, using IntelliJ and Windows, I'm going to just press the alternate key and insert. So we're going to have this pop-up and just choose the constructor, hit enter. Then you choose the attributes you want to include in the constructor and click OK. So now we can see that we have created a constructor with the name of the pet and the color, but the ID is not there. Okay. So this basically is what we did. And the other thing I'm going to do here, I'm going to have the @data. This also is coming from Lombok to help us with getters, setters, and other stuff that we might need. Okay, so I'm just going to put this here. So this is all we need to do for our entity class. So now I'm going to close this down. Now the next class we're going to create is called the service class. So it's called pets. We are going to create a service class for this, right? pet service. This one actually is not, it's not going to be a class, but it's going to be an interface. So right here, we're going to specify the CRUD method we need in our project, which is the CRUD operation. So the first one we're going to do here is CRUD create, right, which is add pet. So for that, we're going to have the pet object. So we're going to have the pet object here. So we have pets. So I'm just going to call this create. Yeah, I'm just going to call this, let's say add. I'm going to call this add. So what are we adding? We are adding a pet, right? So here we have the pet object here. And the next one is retrieve, which is get, right? Get all pets. So for that, we're going to have it as list of pets right here. And I'm going to call this get pets. So I'm going to call this get pets, right? And the third one we're going to get is CRUD, right? Add, create, retrieve, update. So we're going to update pets. So for that, I'm going to have these two, pet, and we're going to have update. So what are we updating? Actually, we are updating a pet, right? So I'm just going to do this like this. And the last one is delete, and this one is going to be a void method, void delete pet. And right here, we're going to pass in the ID of the pet we want to delete. Remember, the ID is of type integer, right? So that is exactly what we specify here right now. So having done this, I'm going to close this down. And now we are going to create another class that will actually implement our service. So this one, I'm going to call it pet service implementer. So I'm just going to call this pet service imp, and this one is going to be a class, right? And here I'm just going to zoom in. Oh, there is error here. I'm going to refactor, rename. This one here is pet service, this service import, and I'm going to hit enter, and it has renamed here. And now this one is going to implement pet service. So this one we implement our pet service, and now we are going to implement those methods here. So by here, I'm just going to press our alternate key, alt and insert. So here we're going to have here implement method here, and just click on OK. And now we have implemented all the method we created here. So now we're just going to go straight ahead and actually specify what we want all this to do, what we want the method to do for us. So now we are going to have the object of our CRUD. Oh, sorry, we have not created. So we are going to create an interface that will interact, that will connect to the JPA repository to actually give us free access to our CRUD operation. So this one is going to call, we're going to call this as CRUD repository. Okay, repository here. So we're going to call this repository. Actually, this one is not a class, it's an interface. It's going to be an interface. And this interface is going to extend the JPA interface. JPA repository. And we are going to specify our class here, and we are going to specify the class ID here as well. So this is all we need for us to get the free access from JPA, the free CRUD operation from Spring Data JPA, right? So having done this, we are going to go back to sorry. No, this is not what I want. Sorry guys. remove this. Yeah, this one. I'm sorry for that distraction. So now we are going to create we are going to create we are going to go back to our service class and actually implement the method that we've just overridden from our sorry guys. Okay, so sorry for that interruption. Okay, now that we have created a repository that actually extend the JPA repository that will give us access to our free CRUD operations. So now I'm going to close this down and just going to zoom this out a little bit. So now we are going to actually implement all this method. So now this one is add, right? So we're just going to call, we're going to create the objects of our pet repository. A pet repository here. So we're going to need this, and just call this pet repository here. And we are going to remember this class is going to be a service class, so we're going to have it as at service. So this one here, and we are going to make use of the all arg constructor because we are going to auto-wire this here through our constructor, and I don't want to create I don't want to create that constructor explicitly, so that is why we are using this Lombok annotation to auto-wire this very one through our constructor, right? Okay, cool. So now the next thing we're going to do here is to call our repository to actually save. So we just call return pet repository dot save the pet, right? So dot save. You can see that we have not written any of this method, but we are having them for free because of this pet. So because of the JPA repository that we have extended here, right? This repository here that we've created. So this JPA repository is the one actually giving us those CRUD for free. Okay, if you go in here, you're going to see that all this has been defined here already. So we just use them for free. No need for writing those ones. So now you can see that we just call the repository to actually save the pet for us. Now the next one here is to get all the pets that we have in database. So we just have return pet repository dot find all. That is all. That's all we need here, right? So we can just, if we want to go further, we can just say stream if we want to go further to list, but we don't need to do this because this one actually is already returning a list, so there's no need of converting to list because it's already returning to list. But as we are streaming, because for example we have so many of them and we want to stream, and we convert this to stream, and now we're converting it back to list. That's what we just did here. Now the update also is going to return. You see that this update is going to also return save. We are using the save for both the update and the add. Both the add, create new pet, and update pet, we are using the save method. Because the reason why we're using the same save method, because when we pass this one here into the form, if the object already has an ID, so it's going to be updated. But if the object has no ID, it's going to be saved as a new object. So that is the trick here. So we don't need to create. So that's why we're using the same method for this save. Now this one here, creating a new object, it hasn't gotten an ID yet. But updating an existing object, that object already gotten an ID. So when the object has an ID already, it's going to be updated. But if there is no ID, it's going to be saved as a new one. So that is what we're doing here. Now the delete here, we're just going also to call the repository, the pet repository, to delete by ID, right? Because we're having the ID of the pet. So we just pass in the ID here. So now we are done with the implementation of our CRUD method. Create, retrieve, update and delete. That is the Crud. And now we're going to create another class called the controller. So this is this is the one that we actually interact with the user and interact with the service, and the service interact with the data layer, which is our repository. So now this one is going to be called, we're going to call this pet controller. Pet controller here. And it's going to be a class, right? Okay, cool. And in here, we are going to need the object of our service, which is private pet service. We're going to need the pet service here. And we're going to call it pet service, right? Like so. And this one is going to be a REST controller. So we're just going to put here REST controller. So this one here, and we're going to have the request mapping. Now this request mapping is what actually specify how the path, the HTTP path, the URL of this that we can get to consume this API. So this one is going to be brackets and this. So now I'm just going to call this pets. So you can see that I have this as pets, which is the topmost URL of this pet, of this API, right? So now we're still going to auto-wire this. We are going to auto-wire it, but I don't want to create a constructor explicitly, so I'm going to use the Lombok annotation called @all_arg constructor to actually auto-wire this for us. So these are the three annotations we need here. And having done this, we are going to create our first endpoint. Now this endpoint is going to be the one that we actually get every pet we have gotten in the database. So for that, we're going to have the public we are going to be using the response entity, public response entity, and this one is going to be of list of pets, right? List of pets. This is pets. So this is what we got here, and we are going to call this get pets, just like this, and here. Okay, let's accept this import. Cool. So now what we're just going to do here is to return new response entity, and we just called pet service dot get pets, and the HTTP status here, we're just going to have HTTP status dot okay dot, we're just going to say dot okay here. That is if it is okay, right? So that is all we need to do. And the next one here is going to be the add. We're going to have the add operation here. So there we're going to have a public method, and this one also we're going to have it as the response entity. We're going to make use of this response entity, and this one is coming from Spring, right? From Spring, and this one is going to be pets too. So we're adding pets, and here we have add. So we're just going to call this add. So what are we adding? We're adding pets here, right? And we're just going to have curly braces, and we are going to have this as we're going to return what is it, this here. So we're just going to return the pet service sorry, we're going to so we're going to return new response entity, and we are going to call the pet service also to just create for us dot add pets. So this one is dot add pets, And this one, we're going to get the status code as create. Right, so we're going to get this as created, but I'm just going to make this like a static import. Let's so that it will be shorter. Let's make it static import. Yeah, so sorry. So alt enter, and this one to alt enter. Okay, so now we're done with this. So let's go ahead with the update. So the update basically is going to be the same thing with this add. So what I'm just going to do here is to just copy and sorry. So I'm just going to copy and paste here, but we're going to change this to update. So it's basically the same thing. So we just change to update, and here we're just going to change this to updates. So that's all we need to do here. And the last one here is delete, right? So the delete is going to be a little bit different. So we're going to have the public void. We're just going to call this delete, right? And we pass the ID of the pet we want to delete here. And now we're just going to call the pet service dot delete and pass in this. That's all. And there's something now we have to do here. So we are going to annotate this. We are going to specify the HTTP verbs we're going to be using here. So this one is going to be at delete mapping, right? At delete mapping, and we are going to have the path variable here, right? So we're going to have here, I'm going to have pets slash the ID of the pet we are going to delete. So we're going to just pass it here as ID. And because of this, we are going to have something here called at path variable. So this is what we have, for this is the variable that we get the ID of the pet from the path that we specify, right? So here we're just going to do this and this. Now there is something we should take note here. This one here is optional. This one is optional if this one and this one is the same. You can see that we have ID and ID here, so they are the same thing. So if these are the same thing, so there's no need of specifying. They will just add a path variable as well. So there's no need of specifying this. But because to just make it clear, so we just have to put this here, because what we have here is coming here and this one is taking it here. So this guy is looking at this, but if this one is not present, it's going to look at this. So make sure this one and this one is always the same. Now if the two are not the same, then you should make sure this one here you specify here and this one are the same. So that is what we have here. And coming here, this one is update. We are going to use the HTTP verb here called at put mapping, right? Because we are updating. So put. And this one here, I'm just going to leave it like this, right? I'm going to leave it like this. So we're going to use it by, no, let's just make it clear. So I'm going to have updates. So this one is update, and here we are going to have request body as well. We're going to request the body of what we are updating. So here we have a request body, because we just want to make this, like I said last time, we are using the underneath method here is the save. We are using save method with the add. So what we have here is exactly what we're going to have here too. So this one we're going to have at request body, So this one here will actually look at the body of the request to extract the form data we entered. We extract it and check before saving to the database. So when in the case of update, when the data of the form is extracted, So it's going to be checked. If ID is present already, it's going to save it as update. It's going to update any changes. But if this data is extracted from the form and there is no ID currently present, it's going to save it as new. So that is what we have here. And this one is going to be at post mapping. So we're going to put this at post mapping, right? Post mapping. And here I'm just going to have something here like ads to be, so it should be clear. It'll be clear for us, right? And the last one here is get. So this one is going to be at get mapping because we are actually getting we are getting a pet from database. So here I'm just going to say all, sorry, there's going to be all pets. So this is what this actually brought us to the we have concluded the now we have implemented the CRUD operation, the post, get, retrieve, update, and delete has been implemented. But before we test this application, there is one method I would like to include, like for us to find. I want us to be able to find a single pet, right? So I just want to include this here as optional method, like optional. This one will help us. For example, we want to find a single pet, so we just get this by ID, get by ID, and we are going to specify the ID as integer ID. So that is what we're going to have here right now. And if we go to our service class, we have a problem there, so we have to implement this here. So now I'm just going to press Shift O, right? The Shift O, or let me just go here and Alt insert. So we're going to implement the only method that the new one we just included. So here we are going to implement this method. So we're just going to call the repository to actually find this by ID. So for this, we're just going to return pet repository dot find by ID, and we are going to pass in the ID, right? And now, because this is optional, so we're going to do something like or else, so that if the ID is not found, it should throw an error, a message. You give the user a message that the ID is not found, right? So now that the pet is not found, sorry. So now what I'm going to do here is to have throw new exception. Is that correct? Yes, correct. Exception. And this exception, we're just going to put just a string here that said pets not found. We're just going to put this as pets not found here. And this one we're going to wrap it with we're going to wrap this here. What happened here? Make this return pet, make this no, that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to wrap this at optional. What is message? Let's check the message here. What happened? Supplier external. Okay, sorry. Here and here. So now we have it, and now I'm going to wrap this here. I'm going to I think. Okay, let's just throw this exception. No need of caching. Let's. Yeah. Sorry guys. Okay, I'm going to throw this. Yeah, just throw this, and also we're going to wrap this value. We're going to wrap it here as of nullable, so that if there is no, that's to guide, we're trying to guide against non-pointer exception, right? So now I'm just going to break this down. Let me just break this down here so it to be clear. So now we have added the extra method we just want to add. So now we are finished implementing Crud. So now it's time to test our application. So before then, we're just going to open up our property files, and as usual, I'm just going to paste some properties here. So you can just pause this and look at what we did here. So this is the database we're going to create. Make sure this database is existent in SQL in your database system. Make sure the name of this database is existing there. And this one is the username, this is the password, and this is the driver. So this one we set it to create. So this one is going to create the table in your database when the application is run. And this one is going to help us to show the SQL that is being generated, right? So don't worry, you can get the full code of this project from the link pasted below. Just follow that link, you go to my Git repository and you download the whole of this project. Okay, so having done this, I'm going to run this application. So let's run and see if everything worked well or not. So let's enable annotation processing and let's wait for it to run. So now we can see that our application has run, and we see that we've gotten an error here. It says this one here is not the database, because this database is not yet in existence. It's not yet in existence in our database. So now what we're just going to do, I'm going to copy the name of this database and just copy, then go to Mysql and create this. So I'm just going to create a new schema and paste this name here, and we're going to hit apply, and hit on finished. So now we have this here already. So just refresh, and we have here, no, not this, we have what is the name, pet db, right? What is the pet here? So we have pet db here. You see there's no table. So now let's go back and run our application and see what we have. So let's run it again and see. Okay, so now we can see that our application runs successfully. So let's swing over to, I'm going to close this down. So let's swing over to Mysql and refresh. We see that we have a table called pet. And opening this table up, we see that there's nothing inside. We have the pet ID, the color, and the name, right? We have not gotten any data stored here. So for that, we are going to open up Postman to actually test our API to see if everything is working. So now I'm going to open up a new URL. So I'm going to just take this as, remember last time we set our port to what is the number, what is the port number we set? So we set it to 9192, right? So I'm going to set this to 9192 and pets. So it's going to be pet. So this one here is going to give us everything. So let's say slash here and put all. So this one is going to give us everything we have in the database, but right now we have nothing in there. So it's going to give us an empty array, right? So here we have empty array, which is correct because there is nothing, we don't have anything in there, right? So I'm just going to zoom this in a little bit. So we can see it clearly. So now let's add a pet. So here we're going to change this to add, right? And we're going to go here to the body, params. We're going to go params. We're going to go body. Where is the body? Here we're going to go colors. Okay, so now we're going to add, and we're going to add a new pet. So I'm just going to go to the body and choose no, not form data. We're going to choose raw, and here we're going to choose JSON, right? So we'll choose JSON. So now we're going to have a JSON object, which is the name and the color. So the first one here is the name here. So what is the name? What's the name we're going to give? So we're going to, let's just say puppy, right? Let's say puppy. And the color is going to be color, right? And so let's have it as so let's have the color as white. So here we have the color as white. So now let's change it to post, because we're going to actually post. We're going to save our first pet. So let's hit on save for what happened. Oh, sorry, here we're going to have pets here. That is the here pets, and let's hit on it again and see for what happened. Oh, okay, let's see. Let's check out our URL. Let's go to the controller pets, and what is it? Add pets and add at post. So this one we should have it here. Oh, sorry, the pet is not correct. Pets, yeah, pets add. So now let's send it again. Sorry for that. Okay, so here we have gotten created, okay, and we have gotten puppy and white puppy. So if we go to our SQL, we see that if we hit on retrieve again, fetch again, we see that we have one here already. So let's save another one called bingo, and bingo is black. Let's say bingo is black, right? It's black. Oh, this 1A. And let's hit on this again, and we see black. So which means our create is working perfectly. So let's test retrieve. So now I'm going to bring it back to get, and I'm going to change this to all, which is our retrieve, right? So let's hit on send. So here we see we have two, puppy and bingo. So these are the two pets we've gotten in our database here. So we have these two here, and we are getting them back here. And now let's fetch one. Let's find one. Okay, let's find one. Let's check the URL to find one. Here we have pets and ID. So now I'm going to put here pets, then the ID. So now we're going to fetch the one with ID 2. So let's fetch one with ID 2. Not found, method not allowed, get pet ID 2, method not allowed. Why? Method not oh no, where is it? Okay, so we didn't create it here. I'm so sorry about that. So let's quickly put it here. Let's quickly add this method we've created in our constructor. That's the method to get a single pet. So here I'm just going to do this public. Man, this video is becoming too long. And public, we're going to have response entity, and here because we are looking for a single pet, we're just going to have get pet. Let me be fast a little bit about this. And here we are going to have it as an integer, right? Integer and the ID. And so this we are going to return pet service. We're going to have the pet service dot get pet by ID right here. So we're going to pass in the ID of this, and having done this, we're going to just map Here we are going to have the response entity here. Response entity, and we are going to call the OK method here, right? And if there is none, we are going to os get. We're going to use this os get new, use lambda expression here, new response entity dot not found. So if there is no pet with the ID we specify, so it's going to return not found, right? So this one we're going to throw the exception. We don't know the cache it, they just throw it like that. And this one now we are going to specify this one as get as well. It's a get mapping by just with the ID. So because we're getting with the ID, we're just going to specify this here as ID. This as ID. Okay, and here also we are going to have the oh, I did something wrong last time here. So here I'm going to copy this as well, copy this and put it here. So this is what we need here. So this apart variable, we need it because we are going to specify, just like the delete, we're going to specify the variable here. We're going to specify the ID as the part variable here. So now we are going to, please make sure you change this to update, so that, because if you don't change this to update, it's going to wipe off the data we got in the database, because it's going to recreate the table again. So I'm going to change it to update because we made some changes here. We're going to rerun the application. So for that, we change this one from create to update, because create basically means when you run the application again, it's going to recreate your table, which means you're going to lose everything you have there. But when you put it on here, update, it's not going to recreate the table. It's going to create the table if the table is not already in existence. But if the table is already in existence, it's not going to create it. It's only going to update if there's any changes from the main class. It's going to update it. So now we're just going to change this to update and run it again. So let's run this again. Okay, so now we see that our application is running already. And let's go back to Postman and test this method. So this one, let's remove this here. So let's try to retrieve a paired with ID 2 and see. Okay, so here we see that we got bingo here. So which means all our now let's try the updates. Let's update. So here I'm just going to change this to update, which is put, right? And let's try to update bingo. So let's go to the body. Let's go to the body. So remember that if you don't specify the ID here, it's going to create this update. It's going to create this bingo as a new one. So now I put this as I changed this to put already. So let me change this bingo to bingo 1. For example, I change it to bingo 1. Now, even though this one is on put, which is supposed to be update, right? If I send this, it's going to give 404 because here we put this. So now let me change this to update. I think we have update there, right? So let me change it to updates. Now let's verify. Here we have update. Where's the controller? So this is the controller. Where is the controller? Where is it? Update put. Okay, here. So here we have updates, right? So quickly I'm going to hit on this, hit on send. So if I hit send, you see that we create bingo 1, and if we go to our database, we see that we are going to have three data. Here we have 3 pairs already. But if I include the ID, so now let's have this. If I put here ID like this and specify the ID, for example, now let's change let's put 3 right here as ID. So if I change this right now, it's going to update. So bingo 2, so let's send, and we're going to see what happened. So you see bingo 3 has been updated to bingo 2. So if we go to our database now, we see that it's updated as well, right? So now let's delete. So the last thing here is to delete. So let's specify what we're going to delete here. Let's check the delete URL. So this is delete pet ID. So now let's go here and put pets. So let's put pets here and put the ID. So let's delete pet with ID 2, and we're going to change this verb to delete, right? And let's hit on send. Okay, we see 200. Okay, so now if we go to our database, we see that the pet number 2 has been deleted, right? So here we see pet number 2 has been deleted. So let's retrieve all. So let's say get and remove this one here and put all. So we see that we've got only 2 pairs with ID 1 and ID 2, right? Okay guys, so this one brings us to the end of this little demo, and thank you so much for being around, and please don't forget to subscribe and also like my videos, and like and share as well. If you have anything, you can any comment, you can, don't forget to put it on the comment section. Just drop any comment you have on the comment section. And also, if you need the code of this project, you can just follow the link on there, click on the link and get the whole, download the whole project from my repository, from my Git repository. So I'm going to upload this code there, and you can just download it and run it. So thank you very much, and hope to see you again in our subsequent video. Thank you and goodbye.